Good morning to you all, or good afternoon, actually. It's morning for me and afternoon for you. I appreciate your time. We're going to go ahead and start. I am David Hayes, and I'm a professor with the Africa Business School. I'm currently in the US, and when COVID permits, I'll be joining you in Morocco. So I think we have a few questions coming in through the chat box and feature that yes, the question here is the microphone disabled for the audience, and yes, as Geeta is saying, Geeta is here helping us out, and I appreciate her help very much. A few things to think about. I think Geeta mentioned to you earlier that if you have questions for us, and we'd like to take those as you have the questions, in the Q&A feature, you'll see that there's a Q&A box that you can ask in the Q&A your questions about anything that you may want an answer for. We will try our best. Today's session, and this is the third session that deals with entrepreneurship, it's the ABS Learning Series, and we've already talked on two of those sessions with you about entrepreneurship, and we're going to cover what those are and what the remaining sessions will be about. Here, this is a little bit about me. I am a serial entrepreneur. I've started and grown several companies, probably best known for my work in healthcare technology and within software. I have mentored quite a number of entrepreneurs throughout my career and have been involved in university academia since about the last 10 years or so. I'm a recent graduate with my doctoral degree from Schema University in Paris. So I work in the US, but I also have a presence over in Europe and soon within Morocco. What have we talked about? We talked about a few weeks ago entrepreneurship and the evolution of entrepreneurship and how we now look at entrepreneurial abilities to be important for all. And we'll cover that for just in a second. The entrepreneurial mindset, what is it? We spoke about that last session. In this session, we want to talk further about, well, what really drives the mindset? And then we're going to speak on Friday, well, what can you do to develop your entrepreneurial mindset for future success? We'll wrap up 2 weeks later, and that's on the 5th of June. We'll wrap up with a panel conversation, and I think you'll be really interested in the panel conversation. We have an entrepreneur from Morocco. We have a social entrepreneur from Sweden, and then we have a corporate entrepreneur from the US, from one of the large US companies, what we call the Fortune 500 companies here in the US. And they'll be seated on the panel conversation where I'll ask them some questions, and then we're going to open up the conversation to you to see what questions you may have for them about entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial abilities in each of those settings as you start your own company, and what we call social entrepreneurship, where we have an impact for society, and then within corporations, entrepreneurship. So this particular session deals with what drives an entrepreneurial mindset. And I want to recap for you the previous two sessions that we have, and then focus on, well, what are the variables that deal with an entrepreneurial mindset? What are things that you can be thinking about yourself and your personality, as well as your mindset? I'm going to make you an offer at the end of this session. I'm going to give you my email address, and then I'm going to offer to you an assessment tool to measure your entrepreneurial mindset. It's called the EMP, or the Entrepreneurial Mindset Profile. I'll make you an offer for that. Some of you that are online now have already taken the EMP and gotten those results. But I'll cover with you the mindset, some research findings, some things for you to think about, and then open this up again to any thoughts and comments that you have. So again, if you have any Q&A questions, feel free to go ahead and answer or ask those questions for us. And then if I notice I'll probably have some of Geeta's help here in terms of the questions that you guys may be asking. So what's entrepreneurship? I've made a case for you in the prior two sessions that entrepreneurship is more than starting your own company, that's very important for sure, but that entrepreneurial needs and entrepreneurial capability is needed by all. We've seen that there's an emerging trend here that large corporations are now becoming entrepreneurial. that they're seeking out individuals that have entrepreneurial capabilities. So we know that within large organizations, those that are entrepreneurial do better in terms of revenue, in terms of productivity, in terms of profitability than those that are not considered entrepreneurial. We see overall that the global workforce trends are towards maybe not full-time employment, but what we call freelancing and being a contract laborer. And those individuals need entrepreneurial abilities as well. Most of us, if you look at the students, most of us, and this is 7 out of 10 of us that get our degree from university, do not end up in the field in which we studied. So whatever our degree was in, most of us end up in fields outside of what our degree of study was in. So I made a case for you that entrepreneurial capabilities are needed by all of us. So I wanted you to think in last session about becoming entrepreneurial. So not necessarily starting your own company, but becoming entrepreneurial in what your mindset is. And I covered with you that an entrepreneurial mindset is one that can empower us all, that we can learn. So we can learn what the capabilities, the skills needed for the mindset are, and that if you see here that the successful future will exploit a mindset that allows us to sense, to act, to mobilize, even under conditions of ambiguity or uncertain conditions. Think about now, as we're in COVID-19. This is a global pandemic that would be very difficult to have predicted at the end of the year. But here we are, and we have changes that we now have to deal with, and we have to adapt to those changes that certainly are outside of our control. So the mindset gives us the ability to assess, to look for opportunities in chaos and in uncertain conditions. So what is that mindset? I spoke about this in the last session, that the mindset are our attitudes, our beliefs, the assumptions we have, our values, and the expectations for ourselves that influence our behavior. And I spoke to you and said that we said this conscious and the unconscious. I used an example of an iceberg. And I said that the conscious part of us, that's the piece that we see above the water. These are things that we know, these are things that we understand, but it's the part below the water, the unconscious part, the majority of the iceberg, right? That really drives what our attitudes are, what our beliefs are, what we assume of ourselves. And that an entrepreneurial mindset is one that says we should be assessing what we think, what our beliefs are, and we should always constantly reassess to determine, wait a minute, maybe the assumptions and values and beliefs that we've had are ones that are formed off of false information. Maybe you've decided that you're not good at a certain activity, or you don't have a certain skill. I'm not good at coming up with ideas. I'm not good at executing those ideas. Well, we're asking you to challenge those assumptions. So for you to release yourself to say that, well, wait a minute, maybe I can develop a bigger picture thinking about myself and those around me. And maybe if I do that, I'll add more value to my career, myself personally, as well as the companies in which I'm involved, whether they're my company that I start, or whether they're one that you're working for a large organization. So we want you to think again about what your attitudes and beliefs are about yourself personally, so we can end up reassessing who we are and reimagining what our future will become. So this is the mindset. What we find in studies, and there's a recent study that I was reviewing about small business in West Africa, and that study showed that those that had received traditional, what I call traditional entrepreneurial training or entrepreneurship training, and we can provide that to you certainly through ABS. We can provide you how to start a company, how to grow that company. A lot of the traditional business plan things, these have value. But when we compare them to those that we train to develop a mindset, and this is looking into the future. This is being self-oriented. It's being persistent. It's being focused on future-oriented, proactive steps that we can take. When we look at those that receive that type of training compared to those that receive traditional training, we find that the mindset training outperforms the traditional training. And we can break it down into really numbers here. For those entrepreneurs that go out, we looked at their profits, and we looked at 2 years later, those that had an entrepreneurial mindset, had training in the mindset, outperformed those that didn't. So there is good research behind this, and particularly within Africa, that shows that the development of a mindset has positive benefits to you and your company. And again, it could be your company that you started or a company that you're working for, such as OCP. So I covered with you last week a few things to think about. I talked about the mindset and where does our influence come from when people tell us what we can do or what we can't do, what we may be good at or not good at. That's an influence by society, by our parents, by our friends, by our upbringing. We speak about an entrepreneurial mindset as saying we have the power to choose what our path is. We have the power to be driven internally, this thing called locus of control. And we believe that we have the ability to respond to events versus react to them. And we have the ability, once we develop an internal locus of control, of thinking into the future and focusing through a plan that we put together on a plan that will allow us to become successful. So that was the second session. We dealt with the mindset. I want to give you some information now that talks about, well, where else does the mindset come from? And how can we best position ourselves for success in the future? And this is a lot of my research and the research that I've developed and published on. And it deals with the development of entrepreneurial abilities or entrepreneurial capacity, which is the mindset. And I want you to think about your personality, what the traits you have in terms of your personality. How can we combine those with skills that we can develop? So entrepreneurial skills that we can develop, and confidence, what we call self-efficacy, which is the perception that we can be successful. So our skills, the confidence that we develop, as well as the personality traits that you would have to best prepare for the future. Okay, so here's a good question that we have coming in that says, what will be different in entrepreneurship tomorrow, taking in consideration working from houses? So that's a very good question. And I think you're saying in terms of us all being remote. Geeta and I were speaking about that earlier in terms of academia and how we have this change that has negatively impacted universities. And what will be our plan moving forward for getting individuals back together in a classroom versus opportunity that presents at university for us to extend out to, as you call, working from homes. We're going to be reimagining, we're going to have to be very entrepreneurial, let's say this, in how we innovate and how we allow an organization to move forward from remote working. And we see that transition already, right? So we see a transition now that says, wait a minute, maybe the office of the future is not one where we all get together in. Maybe that office of the future is one that we say that we're virtually located, but how do we become productive and how do we get the job done from working at home? Now, I'm going to give you an example in a second that I think that will apply here and how we can do that successfully. But I think I can answer this question by saying that entrepreneurship of tomorrow means we have to have the entrepreneurial skills and ability to reimagine how we can be most productive in the future, given differing circumstances. And we definitely have a different circumstance now of working virtually and remotely. So what opportunities exist in my industry, which is academia, university education? What opportunities do you have to reimagine the way that work is performed for your company? So here's the example. So I was saying earlier to Geeta that I had a niece that recently graduated from MIT, And she works for a small startup in Boston called Whoop. And they do sports bands, and they do testing, performance testing with sports bands. Of course, now they're all working remotely. And what she has found out is with her job, and she is an engineer as well as an innovator for the company, she has found that the typical work that she got done in a day when she went to work, she now can get done in half a day. So what used to take her all day to get done at work, because she was involved with other people, because she was interrupted with a number of things that weren't related to the tasks that she had, being at home allows her to now be more productive. So she's able to get more work done at home and be more productive for her company. That's a positive. On the negative side, our social interaction is no longer there. So we now have to find out ways to be more innovative with our social interaction. Gita and I were saying we both miss speaking to people. We both miss hanging out. So I don't have the answer to that yet, but my answer here is it's innovation. It's reimagining the way that things get done. And I think you do that through thinking and reflecting on what your personality is, combined with what your skills are and your confidence. I want to dive into those. The research shows this, and this is a lot of my doctoral research. If you look at what drives somebody to be entrepreneurial, you can find many, many variables that individuals speak about, or characteristics that they speak about. And if you go through the magazines, and this is the research that was done that then led to some of what I've done, the research says that you find many, many variables. And prior to me, researchers took 300 variables, and they said, out of all those that people have said separate entrepreneurs from non-entrepreneurs, what are the ones that really make a difference, that statistically are valid and different between entrepreneurs and non-entrepreneurs? And they found that there are 7 traits and 7 skills that separated entrepreneurs from non-entrepreneurs. On the traits or the personality characteristics, they found that the ones that you see here, there are 7 traits that differentiated entrepreneurs. And then they said, well, what skills differentiated successful entrepreneurs from non-successful entrepreneurs? So you see them here. My research then said, okay, and I'm going to show you some of those results. What have we done to further, or what are we doing to develop these skills? And here's what I want you to think about when it comes to skills. There are skills that we can teach you that separate entrepreneurs, or those that have entrepreneurial thinking, from those that don't. That is future focus, idea generation. We have also execution, self-confidence. We have optimism, persistence, and interpersonal sensitivity. We can teach you these 7 skills to prepare you to be better prepared for future success. So we can, at university, and particularly at ABS, we can teach you to be future focused, to set a vision, to understand where we want to go. We can teach you to come up with good ideas. We can teach you to be more confident, more persistent. We can teach you to be more optimistic. And this last one here, called interpersonal sensitivity. We can teach you, if you know empathy, we can teach you to understand what other people are thinking and understand how to meet their needs and wants and their desires. And this is both on teams that you work with. So if you're an entrepreneur, I'm a big believer that you need to have a team to be successful. And then we can teach you what the needs and expectations are for customers. Because if you think about it, if we understand what the needs and wants of customers are, we can be better prepared to deliver products or services that meet those needs or wants. So we have 7 skills that we say you should focus on to develop an entrepreneurial mindset. Your choices here are to, and by the way, you may not get good at all 7 of these, right? You may say, I want to, for example, learn how to generate good ideas. Where do good ideas come from? And we can teach you that. So we can let you know where good ideas generally come from. We can give you some exercises of how to develop good ideas, because maybe you want to increase your ability to be idea focused. Or You can say, you know, I don't think I'm ever going to be good at generating ideas. So what do? You surround yourself with people that have those skill sets. So you may not be the idea person, maybe you're the execution person. So maybe you need to surround yourself with people that complement your skills. So now we're talking about teams, right? We're speaking about developing team skills that are complementary to each other. Okay, so a good question here again, and Mohammed's asking some really good questions. So it says, are skills universal? Are they shaped by the environment and culture? The development of your skills and the perception of your skills certainly are shaped by your environment and by the culture that you live in. There are some cultures that are more entrepreneurial than others. So I had students, exchange students at my university here in the US that were from France. And if you were to speak to those students, they were being persuaded not to become entrepreneurs because pursuing entrepreneurial activity was considered in their family and within their culture risky. So they went to university in the US to study where entrepreneurship is more generally accepted. I can tell you this, so yes, it's definitely shaped by the environment and the culture, but I can say, regardless of what the beliefs were that you had, I can give you these skills and help you develop these skills regardless of the environment or culture you come from. All right, so I can say that to you definitively. So think about these skills and think about your personality. There are 7 personality traits or variables that separate entrepreneurs from non-entrepreneurs, and here they are. Entrepreneurs usually are more independent. They like work that has a high degree of independence. They don't like structure. They don't like conformity. They usually have a high level of acceptance of risk. They usually have action orientation. In other words, they take action. They have a passion for what they're doing, and then they have a high need to achieve. Now, if you think about these can be positives or negatives as well. So if we have these, for example, if we have high risk acceptance, and males usually accept more risk than females. So if we have a high level of risk acceptance, that can allow us to go out and take risk. So we can say, we've got an idea, let's go out and take the risk. What's the negative to that? If we have a high level of risk acceptance, just mentioned males do, we can take unnecessary risk. So you see, we could go out and pursue an activity or a venture that is one that had we just thought through it, maybe we wouldn't have gone and pursued that activity. All right, so I always say for males versus females, for males, fools rush in. We males are much more likely to just rush in and try something, even though maybe we shouldn't take that risk. And by the way, entrepreneurship, here's the deal for me. Entrepreneurship is about taking calculated risk. It's about minimizing risk, maximizing opportunity. And once you've done that, it's then to say, is this an opportunity that I wish to pursue versus based upon my risk acceptance profile? So based upon my risk acceptance profile, okay? So that leads us into the shaping of skills and traits. And I want you to think about this. I can develop, and we can in academia help you develop entrepreneurial skills. We can grow what we call your self-efficacy, which think of that as self-confidence. It's actual skills and self-confidence. So we can help you develop an entrepreneurial mindset. And we will tell you that that entrepreneur mindset can be applied if you start your own company, a new venture, if you work for a large organization, which you may have heard it called intrapreneurship, or I call it corporate entrepreneurship, or you're not going to start your own company, but you're going to do work for others as a freelancer or a contractor. If we develop a mindset, we can prepare you for any future career in corporations, doing your own thing, or as a freelancer. And if we can reflect upon your personality traits, okay, so reflect upon your personality traits, we can best position you for the opportunity that's best suited to you. So if I have entrepreneurial skills that are at the same level of your entrepreneurial skills, we may want to look at different opportunities based upon our personality. So if I accept a lot of risk and I like independence and I don't like structure, I'll be more suited to an opportunity like the one that I started, which was a technology company that had very high levels of risk, that has a lot of non-conformity and no structure involved in it. I've mentioned a few times my brother-in-law, who's also an entrepreneur. He's an accountant. He doesn't like risk. He likes structure. He likes conformity. Therefore, the type of company that he started was an accounting firm, right? It matches his personality. So I want you to think about this framework as we proceed. Now, I want to share some research with you. Here's some of the research that came from my studies that I've continued on, that I've been published on. So what kind of job do we do so far? And this is data from 26 universities. It's mostly from the US, but 25% of it is from outside the US, and a lot of that came from France. But we look at how are we doing on growing skills for students that leave university. And we can see here that we don't do that great of a job of growing skills, right, for students at university. We want them to have the entrepreneurial level of skills. I want to share with you one interesting change. And if you see an interpersonal sensitivity, which is very important if you work in a large company dealing with others, if you start your own company, starting a group that you deal with as well as customers, knowing their needs and wants, we see that traditionally entrepreneurs scored very low in interpersonal sensitivity. What they think, Steve Jobs, they really don't care what other people think about them, right? So, but it is a needed skill set, and we do see for the future success of entrepreneurial abilities, you need to have high interpersonal sensitivity. And we see that students are scoring high in that category, which I think is really interesting. Persistence, here's a question we have here. Is persistence means sticking with the original idea, even though it's hard to overcome setbacks? The answer there is yes. It does mean that. It means persistence to see the job through. So it means you have an idea, you're confident in that idea, and you persist even if you have obstacles. So for example, with my company, I got investors that gave me money for my company. Well, I thought I could, within a year, turn profit within that company. I didn't quite make that. I had to go back to those investors and beg them, literally, to give me extra money because I was confident that I could execute on this idea. So I got that extra money, and within 3 months later, I then turned profitable, and I was able to continue on even though I may have setbacks. And that was one of those potential setbacks. So yes, that is what persistence is. If you think about persistence, there's positive, that you're motivated, that you're proceeding along the line because you're confident. The negative for persistence, if we want to think about that, we may continue with an idea that we shouldn't continue with, right? We may continue with an idea that really never will work out, that we're too tied into that idea personally to see that this isn't one we shouldn't proceed with. So there are negatives and positives, again, to having high levels of execution or idea generation or self-confidence or optimism, any of these. But generally, if we increase these scores like you see here, I would believe we would be in a position to have better success in the future. Now, I want to show you all of this. Here, you may look at your degree on here, right? So if you think about your degree from your university, that we may look here at, are we doing a good job at university yet of helping people increase their self-confidence, which self-efficacy is a portion of. And you notice entrepreneurs have a very high level of self-efficacy, and no students, regardless of the degree that we're getting, have the level of self-confidence that we need to have. A lot of you online may be math and science students. So if you look at where math and science students fall into this line, they're about average of all students, but certainly we can do a good job of increasing your entrepreneurial self-efficacy. Okay, we have a comment here that interpersonal sensitivity and also self-control is very important. I think it's absolutely one of the most powerful skills you can develop is interpersonal sensitivity. and is understanding the needs and wants of others and being able to help meet those needs and wants. I think leaders of the future become mentors, become cheerleaders, and become resource providers. So they say, here's our vision, here's where we want to go. I want you to now chart a path that gets you there. And I want to understand what your needs and wants are so you can best succeed. So I absolutely agree. How about this? If you look at self-efficacy by gender, we note that generally males have higher levels of self-efficacy than females. And we ask ourselves, why is this? And I think, again, if we get back to the environment or the culture, we probably, and I haven't done the research on this, we're probably looking at environmental factors, culture, individuals saying the roles that females should have versus the roles males should have. This would be my biases or my guess of why these changes are here. But I can tell you this, that self-efficacy can be improved for all groups, and I believe that there should be no gender differences, even though now there certainly are gender differences in the data. Okay, so we have a question here. If interpersonal sensitivity, self-control is very important, then I'm not sure what I understand, then how to hire people. I think that we have to hire people on our teams that complement first our skills. Okay, so we should have people that are good at executing, people that are good at generating ideas, people that focus on vision and strategy of the future. And we should create an environment that has openness in it, where we are understanding what our personal needs are, what the personal agendas are of all the people on our team. We all have personal agendas, but if we understand what those are and we're accepting of those, that we can build a better team. We have a lot of data that talks about having a team built of individuals that have complementary skills, why that is more successful. Now, it's also of interest here that we have data that talks about self-efficacy by race. So this is mostly US data, but it shows that those that have the highest levels of self-efficacy, who are they? They do vary also by race of individuals, and as well as country of origin. So this is probably culture driven. So we look at data by country of origin, and we notice that those in the US have higher levels of entrepreneurial self-efficacy from those that are not from the US. And I very much hope to further this research within Morocco and with groups within Morocco as well. If you add that together, we look at intentions. Who intends to go out? And this is looking at starting a new company. So who is intending to go out and start a new company? We see that there is a difference based upon gender. So females score lower in their desire to go start an entrepreneurial new venture than males. I think that's because of the way we teach entrepreneurship as a risky endeavor. And remember, females overall are less risk adverse than males, but this is not about risk, it's about calculated risk that we're taking. And if you notice, if you get entrepreneurial training, that whether you're male or female, that your intentions go up if you've received entrepreneurial training. And of course, that makes sense by race. There are differences by race. I don't know why that is, but there are differences here, certainly by race. So if you look at students that had identified as Black, they're much less likely to go out and want to start a company than other groups. And this is mostly US data, that Hispanics within the US have the highest intention rates. When you put that data together, and again, here's country of origin data. So what's our entrepreneurial intentions by country of origin? And we see here again that students that are not in the US, they have about half the rate of wanting to start an entrepreneurial venture than those that are in the US. But if you think about this, and you think about entrepreneurial capacity and knowledge, not necessarily starting your own company, but being of more value to an employer, there are positives and very positive impacts by acquiring skills that are entrepreneurial. I'll share just the final couple of things with you. The literature usually says this, that self-efficacy and intentions go hand in hand, and as your self-efficacy or your confidence grows, so do your entrepreneurial intentions. You wanting to go out and do something entrepreneurial. That makes sense. But what's interesting in my recent research is we see some negative results here. We don't know why this is, but we see that as self-efficacy increases, intentions should increase, but that doesn't occur when you look by race. Okay, so my conclusions on all of this. I want you to think that entrepreneurship is more than starting your own company. I want you to think that entrepreneurship applies to all. And if we can develop entrepreneurial abilities, that we have a better opportunity, whether we work for a large company, start our own company, or whether we're a freelancer doing things out by ourselves. I want you to know that skills, entrepreneurial skills, they can be learned. So we can help you learn the entrepreneurial skills that are needed to develop a mindset that will allow you to go out and be more successful, and that your personality, we can think about your personality as shaping your future opportunity. Do you want to start your own company? Do you want to go and work for a large organization? And that as you develop this mindset, you can have an opportunity that becomes transformative. We can better position you to do things that you never thought you were able to do. Now remember, I said I was going to give you an offer. Here's the offer. If you want to take the entrepreneurial mindset profile, this is about a 15-minute assessment you can do online. You can email me. I think Geeta has my email address. Here's my email address. You can send me an email and say, Professor David, could I take that thing you spoke about, the entrepreneurial mindset profile? I think we have a few people online with us now that have taken that. Let me just see, yeah, Yassine is here with us. And then he's taken the profile. So Yassine, you may want to let people know, and you can do this in the Q&A or the chat box, did you think it was a valuable exercise or not? So you can take the profile, and then I can help you think through the data and help develop a plan to develop your entrepreneurial skills and your entrepreneurial mindset. Okay, so I'm going to ask you your questions and what do you think and what your questions are. I do want to let you know that we're going to have on Friday a session that will start speaking about what are some of the things that you can do to develop the skills that you saw. I'm also going to share with you a book called A Whole New Mind. And within The Whole New Mind, it also speaks about developing an entrepreneurial mind. And it speaks about, for you, what are some things you can do. We're going to post some examples from this book as well. We did produce in the Stay-at-Home Knowledge series, I have a 5-minute video that talks a little bit about this book, A Whole New Mind. But on Friday, we'll speak about the book, and we'll also speak about skills. So what questions and comments do you have? What do you think? Good information, not good information? What questions do you have? Go ahead and put those in the Q&A box. We can answer those questions for you as you have them. And Yassine, if you're online with us, if you want to put in either the Q&A, what your thoughts were about taking the EMP. Okay, so whatever you guys wish to speak about, we're here for that. And then we also, oh, okay, so we have another individual that took the assessment. Okay, so, and it says a great opportunity to know more about oneself, plus the interaction. Yeah, I can interact with you. It's a good opportunity to take something that I think can really benefit you in your career as you move forward. And then the opportunity here that we're speaking about is that I'm available to go through the results with you and then give you some things to think about. It really is a self-reflection exercise, some ways that you can move forward with using the data and developing a mindset. So I think we have we have a minute or two for a few questions here. If anybody has questions that they'd like to ask, you can put that in the chat box. So Geeta, I think I've answered these that were open.
I think that there's another question that was just asked right now.
Good. Yeah,
the Q&A.
Thank you. Can poor interpersonal sensitivity skills impact the team composition and the hiring of team members? Yes. The simple answer to that is yes, absolutely. If you think about it, we've all had a boss that wasn't good at communicating with the team, that probably didn't care much about the team and about what the needs and wants of the team were. that has a major impact on the team composition and who would get hired. I say this, that if you look at Fortune 500 companies, big companies, and what they say are needed skills for their leaders, and you look at entrepreneurial skills, interpersonal sensitivity, that shows what successful entrepreneurs can do. That is being good at forming teams, being good at setting a vision, and being good at reading the team's needs and wants and providing resources and mentorship. If the team isn't formed right and we don't understand the interpersonal needs of each other, then we can have a major negative impact on the operation of that team and ultimately the operation of the organization overall. Okay? So definitely, and the more we can learn about having interpersonal sensitivity skills, the better off we're going to be for our organization and for ourselves personally. So you asking some really, really good questions. So we have here, this is a great question too that we have. Do we have some quick wins to apply in order to overcome poor interpersonal sensitivity? Yeah, we're going to speak about some of that idea of having quick wins, because not everybody will have interpersonal sensitivity skills. Not everybody will develop an entrepreneurial mindset. So we have to think small when we start, and we have to think about having quick wins so we can demonstrate to others in our organization the importance of what we're doing and the importance of the development of a mindset. And we look for this thing called early adopters. So if you go out and you look at product life cycle, well, we can take that with entrepreneurship mindset or an entrepreneurial mindset. And we want those that are early adopters that have a positive attitude towards change within an organization. And we look for those to also become champions of what we're doing. It's hard work, it's persistence, but quick wins for sure we have to have. Once we have those quick wins, we demonstrate the success of what we're doing, and we're persistent and we keep at it. So if you go look at product life cycle, it's just like a product life cycle curve. We start, we have to preach. If you know the word preach, we have to lecture quite a bit about why we need to have interpersonal sensitivity. We have to show quick successes, get the early adopters. Then we start getting the majority of other people to adopt that mindset. And then at the end of it, those that are at the end, what we call the laggards, they come on board as well with our organization. So I think that's a great question. And it is about quick wins, and it is about starting small. So if we have any other questions, I think we're starting to run out of time here. But if we have anybody else on here, we have Yassine has said in here, it's interesting to know one's strengths and weaknesses. Remember, he took the EMP. You do need, if you're going to take the EMP, to be honest. You've got to say how you really are. You can answer the questions on the EMP, how you want to be, how you want others to perceive you to be, or how you really are. And if you answer how you really are, you're going to get a tool set that allows you to really think about who you are, what your future may hold, and how we can help you develop into that future. Okay, and I'm always available to help you with that, to develop an action plan. One thing that Yassine has done is he's developed a short-term and a long-term action plan to help develop his entrepreneurial mindset. Okay, if we have any other questions, we can take those quickly, put them in the Q&A box. Always happy to interact with you. So as I'm looking for that, I want to remind you that we have covered in our sessions, and Geeta, correct me here if I'm wrong, we're publishing these. These are being recorded, right?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
Our participant can find them in ABS Africa Business School YouTube channel.
Awesome. So you can look at the sessions that you may have missed, because they do build on each other. We will talk on Friday at 2 p.m. Developing an entrepreneurial mindset. Will give you some activities that you can go through to think about how to develop that mindset. I think it will be interesting. We'll try some, I may even have you do some exercises. We'll see. Normally, if you're in the room with me, I'll have you do some in-person exercises. I'm trying to decide if that makes sense virtually to do them, but we'll see. And then, of course, on June the 5th, very, very good panel that we've put together for you about the entrepreneurial mindset. What does it mean starting your own company? What does it mean as a social entrepreneur or a corporate entrepreneur? I see no other, we have one final question here we're going to take then. Do we see the entrepreneurial type positions and roles tailored in the future within companies' management structure? I'm going to say that for my opinion on that is yes. And you're going to meet one of those entrepreneurial types that works for a large Fortune 500 company. So you can see how his position was created exactly like that. But I think the future is really management structures will have to all be entrepreneurial. They're going to have to employ not just people that are corporate entrepreneurs, that are leading entrepreneurship efforts, that we all have to have a mindset of what it means to be an entrepreneurial leader and change agent, and all are going to have to adopt that mindset. So the answer is yes, we're going to have entrepreneurial type positions and organizations, particularly now, as we try to make this transition. But if I were to vision 10 years from now, those companies that will be very successful will just incorporate into all of their positions the mindset. I thank you very much for your time and for watching what we're doing. You can reach out to me. You saw my email there. I know that very soon I'll have an ABS email as well. But feel free to reach out to me and let me know I can help you. I look forward to seeing you on Friday at 2 p.m. Have a great afternoon.